Welcome to Shining the Light. My name is S.E. Wallebo, and my guest today is Ayori Selassie. She's the founder and CEO at Selfpreneur, and she is the creator of Life Model. Ayori helps leaders use data and AI to innovate and thrive in uncertain times. Welcome, Ayori.
Hi, everybody.
I did not want to butcher your introduction. Can you please introduce yourself, officially?
Yes, thank you, thank you. And that was a great introduction. I'm honored to be here. So my name is Ayori Selassie, and I am the founder and CEO of Selfpreneur. I work at Salesforce as well. I lead product marketing for data services there. I've had a long career with Salesforce. Been there for over 13 years now, and I've done everything from leading sales, marketing, AI, launching products for Einstein, um, and building technology. And my thing that I love to do is really help people innovate. I typically say, I help leaders, but when I say leaders, what I really mean is executives and everyday people who want to make an impact in the world. In this climate that we're in right now, everyone's a leader because we're all leading in different ways. And my mission is to just help people use data and AI to do that better, to shape our world in a better way.
Since I've known you 10 years ago, you've been a leader.
Thank
uh,
you. Thank you.
it looks like there's a light at the end of the tunnel in regard to the pandemic, but a lot of people have been displaced. So how have you been dealing with this pandemic? Are you listening to some uplifting music? Reading some books, listening to some stories. I know you have two kids and a husband in the house. So.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, when it first started last year, it was really difficult for me because we had just had our second child,
Mhm,
and so our son was about 6 months old.
mhm,
I had just returned back to work at Salesforce,
mhm,
and I worked remotely, so I worked
mhm,
from home,
mhm.
um, and everything just went crazy. And it was like we didn't have our nanny all of a sudden.
Mm,
And, I always say it, we were so fortunate because we had work that allowed us to work from home. But there were so many people that didn't have that ability. They had to be out there, and they were out there in service of us all,
mm,
right? Whether it was stocking the grocery shelves,
mhm,
or delivering packages, or working in hospitals, or picking up our garbage, right? There are all these people that were doing all these other things. And so I'm an empath. I just naturally kind of
mhm,
have a sense of the emotional state of the world. It's something that I can't really turn off very well. And
yeah.
so what I've had to learn to do is to transform that energy.
Mm,
So, when I see that there's pain,
mhm,
my instinct is, how can we shift it? How can we transform it? How can we learn from it? How can we grow from it?
mm,
And so that's what I've been doing since the beginning of this pandemic, is
mm,
trying to find signals
mm,
of transformation,
mm,
trying to spread
mm,
those signals of transformation to other people so that they can use them to create and to innovate and to grow.
mm,
Trying to also spread the signals of the pain and the hurt that's going on out there. So people who are fortunate can help those who are less fortunate.
mm,
Um, and in doing all of that, that's a lot of energy work, right?
mm,
That's a lot of
mm.
spiritual work.
Yeah.
And so, before I joined this call, it's Saturday morning. Before I joined this call, I was on a prayer call, with my best friend, and we pray every morning. I join I join prayer calls at work.
Wow. Wow. That's
With
wonderful.
people from
Yeah.
Salesforce and people from Accenture, because we're
Yeah.
not able to go into the church right now.
Right.
And that's something that keeps me grounded,
Yeah.
is my spiritual connection with God,
Yeah.
and knowing that God created this world who knows how long ago, right?
Mhm.
And there's been so many pandemics. There have
Mhm.
been so many natural disasters. There have been so many things that created, traumatic experiences, right? Some
Mhm.
of our ancestors traveled all the way from the African continent in bondage and
Mhm.
built a whole country here, right? So there's been so much that has happened. And we have to remember that we are here right now because we are all survivors. We
Mm.
are all survivors of um, the, uh, the turmoil that is just a part of life. So
Mhm.
that helps me to ground myself, to remember the struggles of our ancestors,
Mhm.
and to be present with the struggles of people today,
Yeah.
and with the opportunities of people today, and merging that together. And that
Mm.
makes me wake up every day just excited and happy and grateful, right?
Mm.
Every day I start my
Mm.
day with gratitude. Some days I
Mm.
say,
Mhm.
thank you, God, for uh, bringing us from night to day, right?
Right.
Thank you just
Right.
for rising the sun.
Mm.
And I listen to motivational speakers.
Mm.
I listen to podcasts. I listen
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
guided meditations. I listen to everything that I need to get in my head and into my space, to
Right.
keep my energy clear and to keep the
Yeah.
space in
Mm.
my home peaceful,
Yeah.
because this is the place, this is our sanctuary, and
Mm.
this is where we grow from, and this
Mm.
is where our children are being formed.
Mm.
And that is the most important thing to me, to make sure that this space
Mm.
is a space of healing
Mm.
and growth and transformation, and we spread all that growth and transformation from this space.
Wow, wow, that's wisdom. I remember last year, I think you did a series of videos. When the pandemic, when they started, right?
Yeah, I
With your
did. Yeah,
friends,
we
really kind
did
of,
the Thrive
yeah,
in Uncertain Times
yeah,
series, and
yeah.
we talked about a lot of different things. We talked about um, how to survive,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of connected with people from all over the world and just kind of heard
Mm-hmm.
the challenges and the struggles that people were having. And this was like, I feel like this was maybe March or something. This was
That was
very
like
early.
much because I listened to one of them. Mhm.
Yeah, it was very early in the pandemic.
Yeah,
And then we talked about financially, how do you protect yourself financially during this time?
yeah,
We talked about both sides of the spectrum.
mm,
When you're a essential worker and you're just trying to get by, or when you're someone who got laid off and
mm,
you're struggling to get by,
mm,
all the way to the opposite end, where you're somebody who is an opportunity builder, where you have capital that you can invest in opportunities to create.
mm,
And then we talked about how do we, as a society, equitably
mm,
move forward
mm,
together, so that we are stronger after this event. That's something that is built into the human spirit,
right,
right? That
right,
every time something challenging happens, that
mm,
we're able to come together
mm,
and we're able to move forward
mm,
as a better species.
mm.
And that's something I think we're still working on, because we're not through this pandemic yet.
No.
But what we saw people fighting over toilet paper, and we saw people becoming very selfish, and that's not what creates survivors, right? That's what causes your society to implode. And
Mm.
we're still seeing it, right? In
Recently, yeah,
January 6th,
January,
we
yeah.
saw the people storming the Capitol, right? So these are all the elements of those are all examples of what not to do in a crisis. And the things that we have seen that are incredible examples of what you ought to do is people coming together, like
Yeah.
people making food and sandwiches for kids
Mm.
who can't go to school and get the free lunch anymore, and delivering food to people and making, like, this wasn't government. These were people.
Yeah.
These were organizations. These were people. These were churches. These were people just seeing that there were needs and filling those needs. And we've seen so much of that last year and this year. And
Hmm.
that's the thing that's going to continue to help us move forward.
Right, right, right. Wow. So those videos, they're available on you. I would like to revisit them. They're available on YouTube, right?
Yes, yes, they're on YouTube.
Um,
So I think if you just search "thriving uncertain times," it should show up.
Thriving under under uncertain times. Please go and check out those videos. They will actually enlighten you and help you. Ayori, let's go back to a little bit to your background. Were you born and raised in Oakland?
Yes, Oakland, Oaktown, Oakland, Killicali, all those names.
It has changed a little bit. Oakland has changed a little bit, though, right? So,
You know, it has changed and it hasn't. And you know, it's some areas are so different. You know, there's been a lot of gentrification. A lot of communities have been forced out of certain
yeah.
areas. You know, I actually own property in East Oakland. East Oakland is not actually much different
Uh,
right now than it was, you know, 20 years ago.
is it
But
is
it
it the,
is,
is it the place where we visited you last time around that area?
yeah, yeah, around that area. Yeah,
Yeah.
around that area.
Mhm.
And yeah, so that area is still very diverse. Um, and you know, I just when I think about what you know, growing up in Oakland, coming up in Oakland, what I learned
Mhm.
from being in that environment, I
Mhm.
think it's like it's still evolving. You know, it's
Mhm.
still evolving because the city is still evolving.
Mhm.
And you know, Mariah, Mariah and I share something in common,
Yeah.
that you know we really believe
Mm.
in equity, and
Yeah.
in making sure that people who have roots in places are
Mhm.
able to stay in those places and are able to thrive in those places as everything around them is built up.
Yeah.
And so Oakland is struggling with that right now, and
Right.
that's really sad. But you know, we have to keep working on it, and we because there are still people there that want to stay there, and there are people who have been forced to leave that want to come back. And
Yeah.
so you know, this is something that you know we just have to work with our government leaders. You know, we have to change our
Mhm.
government leaders,
Mhm.
and we have to inspire our government leaders to be different,
Mm.
so that they can make space for everyone who belongs.
Yeah, I remember, I visited the area where I used to live on 38th Street in Telegraph. That area used to be owned by black folks, right? Right
Mhm.
now, no, that's not the case.
Yeah. And there's so much that gets lost when that
Yeah.
happens. There's so much history that gets lost,
Yeah.
right? Because there's so many movements that were
Mm.
built,
Mm.
that were started
Yeah.
on those corners in those communities,
Yeah.
and those are all things that we have to work to preserve because there
Right.
are lessons in all of that.
Right. Right. And so you grew up in Oakland. You went to school in Oakland, right?
Yeah, actually, I went to school, but I didn't go to school.
Yeah.
So I was homeschooled.
Yeah.
My mom was a teacher, so
Right.
she taught me and my siblings at home.
Mm.
And probably when I was about 14, my mom was like, "Okay, well, I've taught you everything I can teach you now. So you either going to go to school or you're going to learn on your own."
Yeah.
And so I decided I would learn on my own at that point. And
Mm.
so from the age of 14, I determined what my curriculum would be, and I created that curriculum for myself. And I learned, you know, all the stuff I learned in computer science was all self taught
Mm.
through books from the library and through resources online.
Mm.
And then I did go to community college when I turned 18. I went to Lane College. So shout out to anybody
Mm.
in the
Shout out,
town who
shout
knows
out
about
to
Lane
Lane.
College and throughout the
Shout out
colleges.
to Lane. Yeah.
And I did graduate. I got
Mm.
an associate's arts degree there.
Yeah.
Um, and I fought with lots of teachers while I was
Mm.
there. Because the first thing you learn is, if you are going to be on the path of continuous learning, is
Mm.
that as you are learning, you're also educating others, and sometimes education is a little
Yeah.
painful. So,
Yeah.
so I had some teachers that didn't like me very much, but that's okay.
Yeah. So your thought on homeschooling right now, especially during these times, So what can you say about that? Because not a lot of parents are actually having success, having their kids at home, right?
Yeah, um, something something is wrong with our society,
Hmm.
in my opinion, right? And I think what's wrong is that the family unit
Hmm.
has been affected by the growth engine of our economy.
Okay.
And having school, having public school, especially a place where kids can go
Hmm.
no matter what their economic background, where they can go and learn to read and write and do math, and they can graduate. That's really an important function of our society, because not everyone has people at home who can teach them math and all these other skills. So public education is an extremely valuable function of our society.
Hmm.
However, it has also become a crutch for our society, and it
Hmm.
has become something where um, many people um, believe that if they send their kid to school, then their job is done. But that's not the case, right? The people who are really, really excelling are the ones who send their kids to school and bring their kids back home and teach them again and reteach them and unschool them in
And
some cases, where they're saying, "Here's the things you learn in school actually are not right, and you need to think this way instead."
mm,
And so there's a lot of that going on, and that's a part of like being free, right? It's a part of being free, but so many families don't have the time to do that because they might be working two jobs,
mm,
right? They might not have um, people who are can
mm.
be their nannies. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
sometimes it's just people pitching in, and sometimes it's kids raising kids.
Mm.
So this pandemic has really revealed some gaping wounds that we have in our society as it relates to the family unit. And unfortunately, there are many families that are not doing well. There are many young people that are not doing well, and it's because the family units and the communities are not doing well,
Mm.
because they don't have the attention that they need from individuals in their household. And um, and that's actually the most important thing. And so I think I'm a firm believer that our economy must support families. And so people need to be able to make living wages without breaking their back and working two jobs, right? You should be able to make a living wage by working one job so that you can come home and you can have a meal with your family, with your children, and you can see what did you learn in school today. If you don't have that, then you're not living the American dream. And the
Mm.
majority of people in America do not have that. And that's a big problem. And we see that happening in this pandemic. So a lot of kids are experiencing depression. A lot of parents are experiencing depression and overwhelm. And, these little subsidies are not helping with that.
No.
And the structure that we have for employment doesn't doesn't help with that. And that's why, when I talk about the age of the selfpreneur,
Mm-hmm.
the age of the selfpreneur is about freedom. It's
Mm.
about creating opportunities for people to make a living wage doing whatever it is that they need to do. So if you do hair, if you um, if you write, if you perform,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is that we have within us to give back to our society, that should be able to sustain us.
Right.
And when it doesn't, that's when the gaps widen, and that's when the families start to fall through. So the selfpreneur is really about giving people an opportunity to make a living off of whatever it is that they're passionate about.
Mm.
um, some people call it the gig economy.
Mm-hmm.
um, you know Uber is not a good example of it. That's a
Yeah.
very exploitative,
Yeah.
well, ride sharing in general is a very exploitive
Mm-hmm.
way of earning income, but it is a means that many people are relying on right now. Those models have to be improved. to be able to reach the vision of what we're talking about when we talk about the selfpreneur.
So how did you get into the innovation, into the technology? I know you touched on it a little bit, right? To where you are right now, So uh,
Yeah, my
mhm,
mom was absolutely central for me.
yeah,
My mom
because you,
was
you
like,
might you might inspire some, not only kids, but people who aspire to be in the technology field or space.
mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm. Yeah, my mom was central to it because, when we were very young, my mom would tell us
Yeah.
that technology is the future.
Mm,
And, she would be really frank with us. She's like, I don't know how to code. I don't know how to build
mhm,
programs on the computer, right? That's not my thing. But I
mhm.
know that that's what's going to drive our world. So you need to go out and you need to learn those things,
Right.
right? And so she gave us every resource that she could get her hands on to do that. So we had a computer when we were, I probably, like, the first time we got a computer, I was 11 years old.
Mm,
It was like one of those old, I think it was like 386 or something like that. It had two
mhm.
big old five and a half inch floppy disks or 5 inch floppy
Yeah,
disks.
I remember those.
It's like I can't even remember how much space was on there. Like it was like nothing. I
Yeah.
know we filled it up,
Mm.
and the whole thing crashed, and we had to
Yeah.
figure out how to reboot the whole thing. But
Right.
anyway, those were fun memories.
I want to tell you something. We were in LA at the time. We were living in LA, and I was at this place, and I didn't have a computer at all. I'm in story writing, right? So I was like, everybody got I don't have a computer here, and we are waiting for this computer over here. And I was just there, praying on, like, I gotta have a computer, and we don't really have the means. So I stepped down. We stepped down. We were going home, and just like a block, just like a block, I saw a computer just against the meter. Like the computer that you're talking about. I was like, is this a
That
computer?
happened.
you know, you know, I grabbed that computer and I was writing all night long.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
that's
You know,
mind blowing.
yeah. So and I think that's how I started my Facebook, really.
Wow.
Yeah. So I
Wow.
just wanted to share that. So yeah.
Yeah, man. And man, that's a blessing. Like
Mm,
uh, the journey
mm,
to, like, getting your hands on a piece of technology,
mhm,
and then the second journey, which is like doing something like meaningful to yourself
mhm,
with that technology,
mhm,
is so critical. And I think sometimes we set the bar too high for
mhm.
what's like significant. You know, anything you make, like for you, it was, I wrote something, like, shoot, I just wrote a chapter, or I wrote my
Yeah,
first sentence,
yeah,
or whatever it is.
it's
You
whatever it is.
know, and I think it's important that when we talk about technology, we talk about innovation,
Mhm,
that we create space for different things. Because for somebody, doing something with the computer is the
mhm,
first time they drew a line
mhm,
that was the color red, and then
mhm,
they did the color blue,
mhm,
right? Not for everybody, it doesn't have to be a hello world statement in a program.
mhm,
Because there are all sorts of things to that we can create with
mhm,
technology. And so
mhm,
I think that's really important, because there are all sorts of innovators. Yeah, and then
mhm,
I think the other thing is, yeah, like, it's just so important, like, you
mhm,
know the things that I did on the computer,
mhm,
that really, like, got me excited.
mhm,
It was like, playing games,
mhm,
or drawing,
mhm,
or it wasn't the things that a lot of people, it wasn't like robotics, or it wasn't the algorithms that
mhm.
got me excited.
Yeah.
It was the creative things, right? And I think that that's one thing that we have to adjust in our society.
Mhm,
um, the signals that we look for that help us to encourage and support young people.
mhm,
um, really we should just always encourage and support young people, right?
Yeah.
It's not like we're looking for a certain thing, because I think if I didn't just have that encouragement period,
Mm-hmm.
you know like I could be a completely different person. And so it's just having the encouragement,
Yeah.
for whatever it is that you're doing, whatever you have access to do,
Mm-hmm.
that people are encouraging you to explore and be curious about that,
Yeah.
and and praising you, right?
Yeah.
No matter what you do. Like, I remember I would do these drawings and people would be like, "Oh my gosh, it's so amazing." I go
Mm-hmm.
back and look at those now and I think, like, what the heck? They were
Yeah.
just being nice.
Yeah. But I think
But it didn't matter because I was encouraged in that moment.
yeah, and I think that's important to really encourage people, even their efforts. Sometimes you just talked about excellence. But sometimes if we just skip the efforts and like just look for the perfect thing, you know what I mean? Like that can be a little bit dangerous sometimes. But I think
Hmm.
it's really important to encourage even the efforts that the kids are doing at the time,
Yes.
right? You know,
Yeah, and that's the difference between
yeah,
creating a culture of achievement
yeah,
and a culture of exploration. And you
mm,
need both, right? You
right,
need people to feel safe
hmm,
coming to the wrong answer. Like,
I
because
like
guess
that,
what? You get to the wrong answer like probably 100 times before you get to the right answer.
right?
So that's exploration.
Wow. um, Ayuri, let's before we jump into the thick of things, can you explain to us what is artificial intelligence and how it's related to our brains and perhaps even our instincts,
Hmm. Hmm.
right?
That's like a question. That's a question for like a brain doctor or something, right? It's like just regular Ayori. So like y'all can go ahead and do some research on this and fact check me. But
Right.
but so I'll start with the human brain, right?
Okay. Okay.
That's our common denominator, right? We all have
Right.
that.
We all have that.
So, sometimes you'll hear people say that AI
Mm,
works just like the human brain because, the human brain receives signals and information,
mhm,
and then it starts to see patterns, and then it starts to do things,
mhm,
based off of that. Like, it keeps going in different directions based off of what we learn as humans.
mhm.
That's true, but that's also not the most powerful truth, I believe.
Right.
Because yes, humans take in information,
Mhm,
and then we take actions based off of that information that we take in. But there are certain types of information that's actually more impactful for humans,
mhm,
and that's the kind of information that the computer doesn't see, right? The data doesn't really see, and that's emotions. So when you think about your most powerful memories that actually influence all of your behavior, they are usually related to emotionally charged events. A moment when you received extreme praise, or a moment when you received extreme admonishment, or um, a moment when you were very angry, or
right.
very sad, or very happy.
Right.
Those are the things that actually really program humans. Computers, on the other end,
Mhm,
are just programmed by the data,
mm,
right?
mm,
And whatever else the human tells it to do, who's programming it.
mm,
And so we have to like recognize that data is extremely powerful, but
mm.
it's not more powerful than we are. And that's the balance that I think our society is struggling with right now,
Right.
because the data and the AI is influencing us heavily. It's influencing our purchasing behavior. It's influencing where we want to go. It's influencing what we want to do. So now you see everybody like, oh, I don't want to go out there unless there's an Instagram moment for me. Right? That's data and AI influencing our behavior. So we
Right.
have to we have to stop and think about that. And so when you talk about what is AI, it's basically people taking data and saying, this is the outcome that I want.
Mhm,
Uh, Here's all the data. And the data is going to optimize the paths and the information and the structure to get you to that answer. And it'll be able to predict, okay, this person is on the right path to be likely to purchase that product, or this person is on the right path to be worthy
Mm-hmm.
to invest in to help them buy a piece of property.
Mm.
And but not all data is created equal. So that means that not all AI is created equal, because
Not all A.
humans,
Hold on. All AI is created equal.
yeah, not all AI is created equal. Because some AI is looking for one thing, whereas another AI is looking for a different thing. So, for example, if you look at, culturally in different societies, what we identify as home ownership or what we identify as behaviors of responsible home ownership aren't the same
Mm.
culturally, right?
Mm.
In some cultures, home ownership is you own the land, you're responsible for the land, you build the land, you produce value from the land. In other places, is home ownership is you own a condo and you pay HOA fees, and that's responsible home ownership. So those are two completely different algorithms that you'd have to train to identify who's going to be a good landowner in culture A versus who's going to be a good landowner in culture B. So, so these things I think are really important as we start to, as we start to have more reliance on AI. Is what is the AI really trained for, and who is it trained for? And how do we make sure that we have AIs that are trained for everyone to maximize positive outcomes in everyone?
Mm.
And that's we're nowhere near there right now.
Wow. Since the pandemic started, Ayori, there has been a plethora of innovations and maybe new technologies. Can you maybe talk about the opportunities that came with this disaster? What should be the mindset of those who are in the tech scene as we speak?
Yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
the first thing I'd say is I don't think that it's opportunities that arose from
Okay.
the crisis. I think that it is um, ways that we've responded to the crisis
Oh,
that create opportunities for the future,
okay.
right?
Mhm.
And I think that's an important distinction because we're still responding to the crisis, right? And the vaccine. I know a lot of people are talking about vaccines, but the vaccines, at least one of the most popular vaccines that's on the market right now, was created with an algorithm. It was created with a protein, with a machine learning algorithm that looked at proteins and tried to identify what is the right mix of proteins that would allow the human body to have the right antibodies to prevent COVID from manifesting um, in the cellular structure. And so that was created with
Mhm.
AI.
Okay.
And what we're seeing happen right now is this we're seeing our society leapfrog. But as we have seen with COVID, because we've had to really be clear about who has it and who doesn't have it and who's been exposed to it, we've had to create new methods of sharing data. And we've had to shift our priorities to make sure that we're able to use the data that supports healthcare and get access to the data that supports healthcare decisions and healthcare innovation.
Mm.
So we're seeing that space leapfrog. So I would anticipate that we're going to see a lot more um, medicines produced
Mm.
using artificial intelligence. Um, we might see treatments for cancers, different types of cancers, different types of heart diseases or other genetic disorders.
Mm.
We're probably going to see a lot of that, a lot of innovation in that space.
Mm.
And I think that that also opens up the door to us being even more mindful about the privacy of our data and who we trust with our healthcare data, and
Right. Right.
how do we determine that
Right.
someone is trustworthy or that an organization is trustworthy to
Mm.
have access to our healthcare data. And those are conversations that the average person is not prepared to have. those are conversations that even a lot of the experts are not prepared to have, but they're happening right now.
Right.
So these are some areas where our society is actively leaping forward. I think it's fair to assume that some things are not going to go well,
Mm, mm,
right?
mm,
That we'll probably break some things before we get some
mm.
things right. So it's a space of rapid innovation, and it's definitely an area to keep an eye on. And if you're interested in that space,
Mm.
it's if you're a developer or if you're a designer or even if you're just an ethicist or someone who just cares about solving problems in that space, I think the direction of healthcare technology and innovation is a really important place to give attention to right now.
Do you think the government task force, should be they should have a lot of the AI division, so that in the future, if we have such pandemics, we can actually detect them quicker or prevent them.
Yeah, I
I
think
mean,
that task force are important, right? It's like you want to have people that are um, passionate about solving these problems assemble all the time and looking at the opportunity, looking at the challenges and looking at the opportunities and trying to connect connect the dots on that. I think it's important that our government does it. I think it's important that our community activists does it. I think it's important that our private sector does it, and I think it's important that we're doing that in our schools, and I mean all the way from
yeah.
K through university.
Mm,
This is this is uh, this is essentially these challenges, the challenges of climate change, um, access to basic human needs, from sanitation to food to housing
mm,
and safety. Um, uh, uh, Racism and identity, sexism, these challenges, um, and then technology in general and how technology can be used to ethically solve a whole host of problems in our society.
mm,
We need to have task forces for all of those things in every level of our society: government, private sector,
mm,
nonprofit, and in our schools.
mm. Ayori, Salesforce has democratized some AI tools to the public, right? Um, what are some of these development technologies that regular people can tap from to transform their lives or their businesses, especially during the pandemic and beyond?
Mhm. I think the first thing,
Mm,
actually, even
mm.
before you get to the AI technologies and the data and all that,
Okay.
is that something that really like inspires me that Salesforce has achieved is that they've democratized access to learning,
To
and
learning.
they've
Mhm,
democratized access to skills building in the space of technology and innovation with a product they created and a community they created called Trailhead. And Trailhead is basically a place where you can go and you can learn online for free. You can build skills. You get badges. You get status. Your status is kind of associated with all the different um, points that you earn as you learn. And it's a powerful tool. And what it's done is
mhm,
that it has given people given people who didn't have the opportunity to, pay to go to a boot camp. It's given them the opportunity to learn at home. There are communities that have, started around these things called Salesforce Saturdays, where regular people get together in a cafe or online. Now they're doing it over Zoom in these small communities, and they all learn together and they help each other. And that is so powerful, because for a company to be able to create a tool and democratize access to its software and democratize access to the instructions to learn that software and gain experience and skills with that software, it enabled a community to form around it. And that's one of the things I'm most proud of that Salesforce has done. But on top of that, we've taken our artificial intelligence technologies, we've also democratized access to, and we've placed it on Trailhead. So
Mm,
you can go to Trailhead right now and
mm,
you can learn about ethical use of AI, you can learn about ethical use of technology, and you can learn how to build your first prediction using deep learning or using auto ML, which is a technology that we created that allows you to automatically create predictions and build those models without having to be a data scientist. So those are things that we've done, and I just think it's amazing. And it's built on the foundation of
mm.
what we did many, many years ago, where we built the first platform where people could declaratively build software. When I say declaratively, I mean people could build software with clicks rather than code. So we did that in the early 2000s, the late 1990s. And then we've continued to innovate. And that's just something that, to me, is an incredible model
Mhm,
for a technology company to do those sorts of things. And other companies are looking at it and trying to follow after it.
mhm.
Um, and that's a good thing. And I think the more companies that follow that model, the better our society is going to be.
Yeah, good point. On that note, how do you see AI shaping the world in products and services in the next, at least in the next 5 years?
Mm,
Mm.
explosively.
Uh-huh.
I mean, explosively. I mean, check
Yeah.
this out. One thing that's happened right now
Uh-huh.
as a result of this pandemic is,
Mm,
a lot of people have moved over to using more digital currencies, have moved over to using, to purchasing more services online and
mhm,
communicating about the services that they're purchasing online. And I don't just mean with big companies like Amazon, I
mm,
mean also with people like the person who does your hair, or the place where you buy that little special shea butter lotion, right?
right,
You used to meet at the flea market, and
right.
now you're hitting them up on Venmo and saying, when can I drop by and pick it up, right? So
Yeah.
these are all things that are changing, and that is changing the shape of our data. It's
Mm,
changing the quality of our data. It's
mm,
changing the level of information that's available in our data. And
yeah.
that is going to spur more technological advancements in being able to use data to help people more, to help people to achieve their goals more, identify their goals.
Mm,
So these are all things that's going to happen over the next 5 years. It's going to evolve rapidly.
mhm,
And there's a good thing is that we have more data scientists than ever before
mm.
working on these problems, but now we also have technology that's been democratized, so you don't have to be a data scientist to work on these problems anymore, thanks to Salesforce.